Monique. It's Saturday night, and I hope that you enjoyed that countdown music. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late. It was a little bit glitchy. My ring light was not cooperating, but now we're good, and here I am. And it's Saturday, August 22nd, and you know what? I'm going to start over with my extremely enthusiastic wave. Hi, because that to me spells Saturday night. Like we just walked in a club and I spotted you across the room. Oh, girl, I can't believe you're here. Thanks for showing up. So, you know, I've been talking about this on the 3:30 for the last couple of days. For those of you who wonder what that is, at 3:30 every day, I do a Facebook Live, and it's on a Monique Marvez official fan page. And this is the 18th show, and I believe I've missed 3, surgery and a show and traveling. So it's 21 weeks. Wow. Okay. Mind blown. Since March that we've been doing this. And it's been wonderful. And today is probably the most special. And, you know, my father, and we're going to talk about him a lot, said, don't speak in superlatives, Monique. Everything's not. Hey, Judy. Judy Craft is special. So, you know, the old, you know, that's the best. Oh my God, it was awesome. It was the best. My dad used to say, don't speak in superlatives. It makes you sound ignorant. Everything can't be the best. Just say it's very, very good or super delicious or, you know, I very much liked it, in my top 10. But he was very much against superlatives because he said, if everything is special, then nothing is special. So I take that to heart, and I've remembered that. And this, I can say, is probably going to be one of, if not the most special show, because it is the anniversary of my father's death, which occurred on a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday afternoon, probably right around 3:30, actually. But it was Wednesday, August 22nd, 2007, that my father passed. And I just remember, you know, getting the phone call from the hospital, and in my mind thinking, you know, my father is no more. Like my entire sort of identification is, you know, well, I'm Carlos's daughter. You know, people would walk up to me in Miami because I look so much like him and say, you know, is your dad's name Carlos? Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I was like him and girl. So I don't look anything like my mother. If you lined up 300 women, my mother would be the last. The snicker you heard in the background, Cindy, because she's seen my mother. Person that you would say, oh, that's Monique's mother. She's delightful and adorable, but she has crystal blue eyes, and she's the opposite of olive complected. She's translucent. I mean, my mother could pass for blue blood royalty. You can like see her veins. You can pretty much take an X-ray with a candle. She's very, very, very fair, translucent, and adorable. She looks like Mrs. Santa Claus. She's chubby with pink cheeks, and she smiles, and she's delightful. But this, nada in common. So my father died 13 years ago, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about at the top of the show before we get into stories, because let's be honest, don't we know the stories? Don't we know that the Northern California is on fire? Do we not know that? In case you didn't know that, Northern California is on fire. And the, you know, and I don't say that, and I'm not saying that like with mirth, I'm saying it, that's that nervous giggle of, oh boy, you know, Lord have mercy. We, the fire staff is woefully understaffed. The firemen, the trucks, you know, there's all different levels of firefighting. And at every level, we don't have enough. So that is something that if you believe in prayers, you know, pray for Northern California, which I am obviously doing, as my family can see. My mother was sending pictures of the smoke from San Jose and Fremont, you know, which is very far away from South San Francisco, and yet you can still see a tinge in the sky. So before, and actually I'm excited because I set up my drinks. I'm ready. I've got my, and I'm not endorsing them. I know usually on like fancy things, they blur it out. If you're on a TV show, they blur out logos. But I like Diet Cherry Coke. I don't like regular Diet Coke. I don't like Coke Zero. But Cherry Coke Zero is my little go-to COVID treat of, I know it's unhealthy. I know I can take the rust off of nails with it, but I like it. Okay, so don't judge me if I have a sip of my Diet Cherry Coke. I also have very nice, healthy lemon water sitting right next to it. You know, like when you're a drinker and they say, if you're going to drink 2 glasses of water to every glass of booze. So I'm fully prepared to keep the nail cleaning properties at bay with my Diet Cherry Coke. So, because my throat's been getting a little dry, and I think it's because it's been in the 90s here. It's not humid. It's a dry heat in Southern California. I got my hair done today, and my mask got all wet when he was washing my hair, and I put it on the dashboard of my car on the drive home, and in a 12-minute drive, the mask dried to a crisp. So that's how dry it is out. And I'm sure it's probably, the air quality is probably not fantastic. I've kept the sliding doors closed even at night, which usually when the temperature drops, I love opening the sliding doors on my balcony and just enjoying, you know, it's the whole reason you live in Southern California in a desert climate, because when the sun goes down, the temperature drops dramatically and there's a breeze and it's always lovely. When I first moved to California, after growing up in Miami where the sun drops and it's still balmy and warm, you know, it's like, what? Desert climate? Like, I'm not familiar with this. I'm familiar with balmy. I'm not familiar with, and the sun went down and now I'm freezing. You know, it's like, I bought sweatshirts and shawls at every outdoor mall in Southern California for the first year I lived here, until I finally just started keeping a beige shawl in my trunk. And then you just realize, yes, you're in Southern California. That's why you always see doucheboggins with popped collars and sweaters tied around their neck. They're actually not just doucheboggins. They're preparing for the sun to go down, which is when they're at their probably most douchebogginy. But I digress. So I have my drinks. In spite of the dry air, I will have lubricated vocal cords, and we're going to have a lovely remainder of the show. So yes, that is, for me, the biggest news story, being a Californian, are the fires in Northern California. Then I have a couple of cute little news stories that I'll share with you about the Pacific Northwest. One of them is the supposedly like apple tree zero, 184-year-old apple tree is actually dying, which I didn't know that. I mean, obviously trees die. We've seen dead trees, but I didn't know that if a tree was cared for and there was nothing going on around it, that it was just, this is the life cycle of an apple tree, is 184 years. Like, you can't complain. The tree put up a good fight, 184 years. And I'll read you the story about the tree and what they're doing about the tree, because the tree has seen a lot of things, 184 years of treeness is a lot. And then I have another story about an elderly man, 94. I think we can all agree that's elderly. I know 60 is the new 40, but I'm not sure what 94 is. 94 is the new 72. Okay, maybe it is. Okay, so a story of an elderly man who made a difficult decision at 94. And that's a great story. I didn't pull a bunch of stories because I already kind of knew what I wanted to talk about, which are my dad and Cycles of Seven and HBO Max, which kind of dovetails into those. So it's kind of like a braid. So first, let's talk about my dad, because there's a lot of ground to cover, and that's the most important. So, I always talk about point of identity. Like, what is your point of identity? And in fact, I learned this from my dad. And to some people, their first point of identity is their religion. You say, so who is Chuck Jones? And Chuck Jones will say, well, before anything, I'm a Christian man. Okay, well, that's your first point of identity, Chuck Jones. That's wonderful. By the way, I have 2 Facebook followers that are named Chuck Jones, which makes me laugh because that's always my name, like John Doe. That's my go-to fake name, is Chuck Jones. So when I actually saw Chuck Jones wants to be your friend, I was like, is this real? Or did somebody just make up a dummy account to be Chuck Jones? But my point of identity, people ask me questions. They're like, it must be hard being a female comedian. And I laugh because I say, well, that's my only point of reference. I've never dressed in drag and pretended to be a man to see what that would feel like on stage. Like, I only can see through my own eyes. So my first point of identity is me, Monique, human. I don't step into, well, I'm a strong Latina woman. Well, if you say Latina, people figure you're a woman because the A's at the end. And I haven't totally bought this Latinx neutral gender situation. I like that the Romance languages have genders attached to things, inanimate objects. Although I'm not inanimate, I'm very animate. But I am, yes, I am Latina. I'm in culture and heritage, and maybe even sometimes in thought process. I'm a little old school when it comes to men, meaning, and some of you who know me know this, like I like manly men. I don't like when they're all shaved and oiled up and shiny. Or like, if you really, really want to set me on edge, tell me that you're metro. Like, to me, metro's just homo that won't commit. I'm sorry. I know sorry, Cindy. But I mean, for real. Like, I have no interest in metro. Like, I know that people talk about, sexual fluidity, but no, I'm fully hardened. I am not molten lava. I am hardened in man land, and that's it. That's the concrete's been poured, the little shells have been put in. Somebody wrote their initials, and it just said Wienerville, WV, and that's it. In the words of Jojo Rabbit, case closed. So yes, I'm old school in that way. If I was involved with a man who said, when I was younger, I was gay, I would be like, you're still gay. Like that. It's not like you had rubella, So I get it, though. I get that every once in a while, you're like, you know what? I've been eating hash browns for years. I think I'm going to go with, something else. I'll go with toast. No, stick with the hash brown. So yeah, in that aspect, I could be considered, lower vibration or old school or inflexible. I get that. I'm okay with it. And I even understand if you think that that's not fun or that it's, judgmental or whatever you want to think. I don't think of it as judgmental. I think of it as I have preference. I'm discerning. I know what I like. I like manly men with natural, organically growing hair on their bodies. I don't like clipped arms. In fact, when I watched The Sopranos, I could lie to you, but there's an opening shot of Tony Soprano, James Gandolfini, the actor, driving into Jersey. It's part of the opening credits, and the sun glistens on his arm hairs, and I get this wistful, semi-horny nostalgia. Like, where did arm hair go? Like, how come you don't see it? I was going to tell her, how rude. I almost told my dear friend to shut up when she's being a wonderful support. She's being off-camera Ed McMahon. But like, I'm not a hairy person. I'm a girl. I'm just not hairy. I'm not hairy at all, But I like when men have, like, very operational leg hair. When it's like, when it goes, I like that. I like when they have a watch and there's like a little bit of hair around the watch. And I know that that's not popular. I know that arm hair is not popular. It's not in vogue right now. And it's interesting because when people say, well, that's your imprint, well, my dad was a big man. He was a little over 6 foot and ran over 200 pounds most of his life and got kind of hefty at different parts of his life. He didn't go up and down like Luther Vandross, but he could go from 190 to 240. That's about a 50-pound swing for most of his life, depending on, if there was a lady in his life. He was an emotional eater. When he was sad, he would get heavy. And when he was happy or he met a new lady, he'd trim right down. He had a closet full of clothes just like a woman in varying sizes from, 42 regular to 44 long or whatever. I don't know men's suit sizes. And but again, being Venezuelan and partially, I'm sure, having some indigenous blood, you can see by my cheekbones, I don't look like everybody else. My dad wasn't hairy, and he had like a very weak little tuft of hair on his chest, and like 5 or 6 random hairs on his nipples, sort of like a female Russian gymnast. So that was not my imprint that I get it from, like, oh, my dad was a certain way. So my physical imprint of large men is probably my dad, and being old school towards, my dad always said, if you take care of the man, meaning it is your intention to show kindness and support towards a man, not subjugation, but Rogaine on the arms. Is that real? Did somebody just say that? Then, that the man will feel a subtext of desire to take care of you if you take care of him. That's just sort of the natural order of things, sort of what the Bible calls, I guess, being a helpmate. So I've always been an extremely supportive woman when I've been involved with a man and he says, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I've always been, hey, how can I help? How can I be supportive? Or, yes, I believe you can do that. And, hello, Seattle. I've always believed that it's important that if you have someone in your life, and I'm this way even with girlfriends or platonic male friends, but certainly when I have a special man in my life, I go out of my way to be supportive in whatever their endeavors are. And that is something that my father very much instilled in me. He said that's very important. And we talked a lot about admiration and respect, and that it's very important that a man feel respected and admired. And I believe that I've learned that lesson and carried it into my life. So, these are just little sidebars, but he had a few things, and those of you who used to watch, listen to me on KFI know that every Father's Day or the Saturday night before Father's Day, I did that show. I did the show where I talked about, my dad-isms, my Carlos-isms. So here they are for the new people. And certainly the KFI people never complained. I actually got many, many emails from people saying, please, could you email those? Could you put them somewhere on the website so that we can find them? So the first thing that my father instilled in me from childhood, because it's so profound that it's like planting a seed that just grows bigger and bigger and more important, like that apple tree in the Northwest every year. And it will outlive me because I've planted it in everybody I know, and here it is you don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. He knows it. Now think about that. You don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. He knows it. I've really come to understand at a certain point in my life that the word constructive criticism is an oxymoron for a multitude of reasons. Number one, it implies that you know better about another adult or how they should live their life than that adult knows about their own life for themselves. That you know their path, that you had a conversation with God, like Neil Walsh, I think that was the author's name that wrote those books, and you decided that you were going to tell Chuck Jones, this is how you should live, Chuck, without really, consulting Chuck or looking in the mirror to say, well, now that my life's all handled and I'm perfect, now that I've got nothing to do on myself, I'm all done, I can turn to Chuck. You don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. He knows it. The older I get, the more I realize that, the devil is a critic. It's not constructive. People know when they're anxious. People know when they're making bad decisions. Now, if somebody asks me, what do you think? Now, that's a whole different ballgame. Then I'll say, I think that the consequences for your decision and your actions may be bigger or more treacherous. Oh, don't worry. Somebody just posted, sorry, I'm late. There's no late. It's like a movie. You can watch the opening, 19 minutes at your leisure. I think that, if you decide that you want to continue using cocaine, number one, it's going to destroy your heart. You're going to get palpitations. That's not good. It's going to make you photosensitive. So when you go in the sun, you're going to get weird spots. A lot of people don't know that, but That's why people that do cocaine are very pale. If you guys remember Scarface, Michelle Pfeiffer was very white. It makes you photosensitive. It's not good for your skin. It's bad for your circulation. It's like any other form of speed. It accelerates and ages your internal organs. So let's go down this road. You're going to feel really good about yourself for about an hour, 45 minutes, and then you're going to realize that you spent a lot of money. You don't look very good, and you're twitching a lot. So let's discuss. But I've never, ever in my entire life had anybody walk up to me and say, I'm considering shooting up. What do you think? It's never happened. It's never happened. Ever. Now, I've had a couple of people come up to me and say, what do you think of the person I'm dating? In fact, I'm not gonna name names. I was gonna name names, and then I stopped. I'll name one name. Okay. So I have a beloved friend that I've had for over 35 years. Like, that's a long time. Like, I was the little YSL, little makeup girl at Birdine's in Miami, Florida, when I first met Sherry. Her name's Sherry. And Sherry invited me to lunch. I'm not outing anybody. If you know Sherry, she's in the lady pond, just like I'm hard in Wienerville. Although she has come out of the lady pond onto the man shore of Wienerville a couple times in her life, but mostly she's in the lady pond. And Sherry took me to lunch because we're close, and I'm a good judge of character. Many, many years ago in the 80s, Sherry took me to lunch. I'll never forget this. I can picture it. I can picture the surroundings. We were in Coconut Grove, Florida, at the Mayfair in the middle, eating, what would have happened that would have been perfect. We were in this beautiful outdoor setting in Coconut Grove, Florida, having a beautiful lunch while, I think there was like piped in music. We were listening to More, the theme song from Mondo Connie. It was very, very international, very beautiful, beautiful lunch. Sherry's new lady was beautiful, and it was a wonderful afternoon, very long conversation. And she, Sherry picked up the tab, and when we were alone in the car, she said, so what did you think of her? And I said, get away as fast as you can. She's going to ruin your life. And that's not what she wanted to hear. And she's like, well, I have plane tickets to travel with her tomorrow. And long story short, I was right. And if Sherry watches this, she'll laugh very hard. But they salvaged it, and they've remained on and off friends for all these 30 plus years. And I can tell this story because Sherry and I still laugh about it. And not like a little laugh, like a remember? And then we laugh really hard because of how right I was. And it's now become comical. Comedy is tragedy plus time. At the time, it wasn't funny at all. So yes, do people occasionally ask my opinion on decisions? Yeah, pretty often actually, because I am a good judge of character. But I don't volunteer. I don't say, hey, you know what you need to do? Like, I'm not that person. And even when people say, I really want your help, I'll tell them, you know what? I have faith in you, because I do. I have faith in the goodness of the people around me, because your vibe creates your tribe. And if somebody is in your life and in your mind, you find yourself like, ugh. And even the whole concept, I remember specifically, is there a reason you're on there, Stanton?
Hi, Monique. Yes, producer Stanton here, just breaking in just for a moment. Sorry to interrupt the live stream. You remember that little problem we were having before the stream where your video froze up and you had to exit out and come back?
Do I got to do it again?
Would you mind doing that again, because the videos froze up? I'm going to go ahead and throw up that 30-second countdown once again. We'll enjoy that video, and we'll see you back here on the other side.
All right. Well, thanks for letting me know. Froze sucks. Yeah. Okay. I'm leaving you now. All right, are we here? Are we back? I think we're back. I'm going to say we are. So getting back to, yeah, I got the thumbs up emoji. I like that big thumbs up. So your vibe creates your tribe. And if somebody's in your life, I was saying, I remember specifically that I was dating a guy in early 2000, March 2002 to be exact, because people always say, like, you have such a good memory. And sometimes I'm vague on purpose, but who cares? He's not watching. So in March of 2002, I was dating somebody who explained the term frenemies to me. This was before Bravo or Real Housewives, and he said to me, like, you know when you have a friend and you really like them and they like you, but there's like a competition and you wish them well, but sometimes something good happens to them and you're a little pissed, or sometimes something bad happens to them and there's a little bit of schadenfreude where you're like, yeah, I saw that coming. And I was like, and I stared at him like I do when people are sarcastic. I said, I don't understand that. He goes, yeah, like frenemies. I guess it was an early term that was just being kind of kicked around by the very, at that time, young millennials. And he's like, you've never heard of frenemy? I'm like, no. He's like, come on. I'm like, everybody in my life that I spend time with, I care deeply for. And if something goes wrong in their life, it saddens me. And I don't wish anybody any harm. And I'm not in competition with anyone on the planet Earth, let alone somebody who's my close friend. And he stared at me like a monkey at a magic show. He was like, who are you? What are you, like Polly Pureheart? And believe you me, I am not even close to Polly Pureheart. You don't even want to know some of the black-hearted thoughts I come up with. But not about my friends. Not about anybody in my circle. So if you have somebody in your life and they're a challenge and they say they're going to come over to your house and you're like, all right, whatever. We've been friends for years. Chuck wants to come over. Then, you need to ask yourself, why are you friends with Chuck? You're not doing him any favors. That's just your ego. Chuck doesn't want anybody to be his friend that doesn't genuinely like him. And I've heard people say, well, he doesn't have any friends but me. Well, you got to ask yourself, why are you sticking around? And how did he lose all the other ones? If he's like living under a bridge and not, maybe the best thing you can do is say, you know what, I'm gonna leave you to God, my friend, because right now I don't have a lot in common with you, and just the thought of you makes me feel nervous and itchy. Sometimes that kind of honesty is just the turning point if you're willing to say it with love and good intention, not as a frenemy, but if someone like, I don't know what happened, Chuck. When we were in high school, you were all state. You were champion. How did you end up like this? I understand. You had a couple of bad divorces. And I do that. I have had the tough love, share and moonstruck snap out of it talk with some friends. But I have it with love. I genuinely want them to have some sort of, psychic reset and go, you're right. It doesn't matter if Bob doesn't love me. I love me. Bob can go, pound sand. Yeah, Bob can pound sand. I was going to say worse than pound sand. Yeah. But so ask yourself why the people that are in your life are in your life. And if you have, as my dad says, you don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. If you have a couple of fat kids, ask yourself, what do I love about the fat kid? Mine the gold. I have a lot of friends in my life. I'm not going to mention names for reals, but I have a male friend that I've known since I was in my 20s. He's a weirdo. Like, he's just a weirdo in so many ways. And he's wonderful in so many ways. He respects me infinitely as a talent and an intellect. And we talk about the arts and movies, and we saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood together, and we broke it down and had a big discussion that was really fun. And we are genuinely friends because I mine the gold, and the weird part of his life, that's on him. He's not my boyfriend. I'm not dating him. Friends. So, I think about the people in your life. Is it happening again?
I'm so sorry, Monique. We are having ourselves a little trouble. It may be StreamYard. There was some new code that was added this week, apparently. I don't know, but can you back out one more time? And
Sure.
hopefully this is it. I'll play the video. And so sorry.
Do I
Hopefully it
seem
doesn't.
upset? It is what
Not
it
at
is.
all.
I
Never.
think everybody in my building's watching porn or something. Maybe it's just it is Saturday night at 8:30. It could very well just be the Wi-Fi.
That sounds likely. Okay, here we go.
Okay. All right. Are we good? All right, we're back. All right, you know what? I get it. I get that it's challenging, but hey, these are the times we're living in. If the worst thing that happens in my life is that the video freezes up when I'm trying to tell you guys about truly being friends, then I like to believe that you're friendly enough that you'll wait. So think about the people in your life and why they're there. And we got plenty of time under the cover of COVID to really weed them out, just like I've gone through my underwear drawer 3 times. You can go through your friend drawer and you can make decisions under the cover of COVID. Use this to your advantage and say, you know what, when this is all over, I don't think I want to be as close to that person as I was. I can love them I always like to say, I can love anyone from 500 feet away. When it comes to working out, I used to tell my friend Michelle, I can do anything for 30 minutes. Like I can stand on my head and spit hot nails for 30 minutes. So she would create these really super intense workouts where we're like climbing stairs while lifting weights simultaneously and then doing jumping jacks at the top. And after 30 minutes, I was gassed, but I was super fit. I might even bring back some of those brutal Michelle 30-minuters. But the point is that, if you once loved somebody, I believe that love is matter. It's on the elemental table. You can't destroy it. It just changes forms. So if there was somebody you once really loved, they were your good friend, and you saw something in them, maybe that thing is transmuted and it's changed. Maybe a few bitter divorces or a custody battle or a drug habit or losing money in the '08 meltdown or a foreclosure. I don't know. There's things that change people irrevocably. They change. But that thing that was in them, you can still find it in your heart to love them from 500 feet away. You just don't necessarily have to interact with them. Ken Kaizen, Handbook to Higher Consciousness, says that love is not necessarily a call to interact. There's plenty of people I love that I genuinely care for, but I don't interact with them on a regular basis or on any basis, really. I'm just happy to like all their stuff on Facebook. And how great is that? That we now have a way to love and bless people from afar without them ever knowing your home address. How awesome is that? I mean, we didn't have that when I was a kid. You actually had to have them know where you lived. So you don't have to tell the fat kitties fat. Just chew on that for a while, no pun intended. It's changed my life because the older I get, the more I understand. To take it a step further, if the baby's having trouble swimming, you don't push on their head. If they're already anxietal, if they're already filled with self-doubt, if they already have shame, if they already are lacking self-confidence, you really think you're giving them the, constructive criticism is really going to help the matter? No. You come at them with love and acceptance and faith that they're going to find their way. And then they sometimes do. I got a very nice email from a lady today saying that some words of encouragement that I'd given her at a low point in her life did her an enormous amount of good, and it made me very happy. The second thing my dad used to say, and this one was really important, and it was about gratitude. He would say, Monique, If the village idiot gives you his best ball of string, you take it and you say thank you. Now, that in itself sounds a little judgy, like village idiot, like you had to go village idiot. But I know what he meant was you know, if somebody that maybe you don't know that well, or that you know, you're not sitting around thinking, boy, if they bring back the space program, this person's next in line for going up in the shuttle. You know, all of us have people in our lives that maybe don't know us that well, or they're not that dialed in or whatever. But if somebody takes the time, like I remember when I first started comedy, people would walk up to me and they would say, like, you're hilarious, I love you, you remind me of fill in the blank. You know, I used to get Brett Butler back in the day when Brett Butler was still a thing, when Grace Under Fire was on the air. Well, I realized she's kind of brassy and outspoken. Okay, great. Or I would get Dennis Miller. Okay, he's smart. But people would compare me to comedians that I would be like, I don't think I'm anything like that person. But clearly they're not walking up to me saying, let me tell you a little something. I hate Dennis Miller. Can't stand him. And you remind me of it. No, that's not what happened. They walked up with a smile on their face and said, you remind me of, in a positive way, with an open gesture. So what does that mean? That means that they like me. They're comparing me to something they like, even if it's not something I like. You know, whatever they're giving you, if somebody is offering you up something, a compliment, a kindness, a gift, they bought you a shirt you're never going to wear. Parents don't teach their children graciousness anymore. You know, little kids feel perfectly comfortable telling their nana and their pawpaw, like, what the heck did you get me this for? Where'd you get it? Walmart? I'm never going to wear this. You know, like, what? When I was a kid, on both sides, as I mean, the village idiot lesson, but when I was a little girl, I remember having a birthday party when I was 4. Like, I do have a good memory. When I was 4 years old, I remember that before anybody arrived at the house, my mother sat me down. She said, no matter what anybody gives you, when you take it out of the box, you love it and you make a big show of appreciation. I was 4. And I remember because a little boy named Carlos, evidently his family was in a hurry or something, but I remember that my birthday gift was wrapped in tinfoil with a very pretty, like, clearly a used flower, but it was smooth, it was pretty, it looked like a mirror, it was beautifully wrapped, but clearly they didn't have any wrapping paper. It was the 60s. His mother felt like that this was before gift bags and tissue, and they wrapped it in tinfoil. It was shiny and beautiful with a flower taped to it. And I remember just pausing and going, is this aluminum foil? Is this like what my mom wraps back in the day they called it a London broil. I said, is this what my mom wraps a London broil in? And my mom shot me a look like, you're not doing what I trained you to do before these people arrived. You're like, I love tinfoil wrapping. How did you know? You're like, you know, but people don't teach graciousness. People don't teach appreciation. Oh, are you guys hearing me? Can you see me? Stanton. Oh, no.
Hey, Monique. Well, we've got you as a steel frame. You're very beautiful, and it's a beautiful background, but we'd love to see you moving.
All right.
Hey, everybody, give a big thumbs up for the stream. Monique's doing a great job tonight.
Well, I'm doing my level best, and that's all I can do. So let's come back on. What do you say?
Okay, one more 30-minute pause, and we'll be back.
All right, 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
So evidently StreamYard has decided that it doesn't want you guys to know what my dad had to say. But you know what? They are not going to stop me. Damn you, StreamYard. I'm going to criticize you. And you know, it's funny. I just remembered this. as we were, are we good, Stanton? Can I get another blue thumb? Yeah. Okay. If we can hold out for 20 more minutes. So actually, when I was a little girl, my dad, there were people got spanked in my house. I'm not saying no. There were spankings. There were old school spankings. My mom was occasionally the shoe was her weapon of choice. I think I had a hairbrush once, but it was, you could do that back then. But my dad's real thing was when he was really upset, and my uncle Jose de Armas, rest in peace, I'm pretty sure, he would sit his sons down. He had 3 sons, and they were wild animals, wonderful kids, and they're grown men, and I haven't seen them since they were little boys, so it'd be so weird if one of them like Facebook friended me and said, I'm Joe de Armas' son, because that's what Facebook does. Like, I've got cousins in Venezuela that are my Facebook friends. It just blows my mind the world we live in. I just wanted to sidebar that because we're so blessed. As much as we're complaining about COVID, yeah, it stinks. It's not fun. But we live in a world where you can let somebody in Venezuela know it stinks. You don't just have to keep your stinking local or on a landline, and you don't pay long distance charges anymore. Remember when your phone bill actually had long distance? Like, I lived in Dade County, and my aunt lived in Broward in Hollywood, Florida, and my dad would complain about the long distance bill because my mother called her sister, because you only used to dial the 7 digits, and then if you were dialing one county over, you added 1, because we were area code 305, and they were, Broward County area code, and you dialed 1, and then their area code, and then it was long distance. Like, so much has changed. So, as I was saying, my uncle Joe de Armas, he would tell his sons to sit down, and he had this wooden chair in his office, and he would say in Spanish, "You've disappointed me, ahora te tengo que criticar." Like, you've disappointed me, now I have to criticize you. And he would like shame them and criticize them and let them know how disappointed he was in their behavior and how they let him down, to the point where I remember my cousins yelling like, "Just spank us, will you just spank us, please, and get this over with." So, yes, we had some, I'm gonna say minor corporal punishment compared to other people. We had minor corporal punishment in our home, and we had the looks. Like, my parents could throw us a look, both of them, and you knew, like, you straighten up. So we were taught graciousness. We were taught gratitude. We were taught please and thank you. We were taught no matter what anybody handed you. You remember when there was a time when you went to somebody's house and they offered you a drink and you would say no thank you, and then they'd say no really, it's okay, and you would be like, I get to, maybe that's why I have this obsession with cherry Coke Zero, because as a kid I was told, like, unless you're choking and fire's coming out of your nostrils, you don't say yes, I would like that. Except birthday parties. That was a phantasmagoria of goodness. Like, I remember old birthday parties when I was a little girl, when you get a sheet cake from the Winn-Dixie. Yes. And I'd always ask for a corner with an extra flour. Yes. So you don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. And if the village idiot gives you his best ball of string, you take it and you say thank you. Then the third thing my dad would say, and it was kind of tied into an adage that a lot of people use, which is you can't make a second first impression. My dad's was, retail is detail, and you're always selling something, even if it's just yourself. Now, we all have heard, the devil is in the details, and nobody likes fine print. But what my father meant was retail is detail. Is like, pay attention to things. Be very specific. He would always say, really is an adverb. It's not really hot, it's very hot. He was very specific with his language. He was very specific. I knew by the time I was in 4th grade that it takes the earth 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.1 seconds to turn, because my dad told me. He said the world is very specific. There's nothing random. Everything is in its place, in its order. Retail is detail. Pay attention. And I know this sounds terribly, you had an Italian mama slap us. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. There you go. But I remember my father, specifically when I was you know, like about 16 years old, you know, and I know this sounds incredibly sexist, but take it for what it's worth, that I had a little boyfriend and he was coming over, and my own father said, "You might want to put on a little lipstick, Monique, you look pale." And he didn't mean anything by it. He was just saying, "Hey, this young man has taken the time to come over and spend the evening, you know, put on a little lipstick, comb your hair, get ready." And that doesn't bother me. It didn't bother me then, and it doesn't bother me now. I could just as easily do this show in a house dress. You know, I had on a house dress 7 minutes before the show started. But you know what? Even though it was a very pretty house dress, I didn't feel like I was dressed to deliver this show to people who were taking the time to spend their Saturday night with me. This is a nice dress. I like it very much. And it's appropriate for us, for our Saturday night date. The fourth thing that my father used to say, and this one had a lot to do with religion, because my dad wasn't religious, but he had a secular spirituality to him that made a lot of sense to me. And he would say excellence is its own reward. You know, he would, because I went to a Baptist kindergarten, Coravilla Baptist Church. And most of the kids that were in my kindergarten went to that church on Sunday. And I always felt left out because they would have their Sunday church discussions. And I hadn't been there because I only went to kindergarten Monday through Friday. And actually, my cousin got married in that church, my cousin Lily. But yeah, I went to Coravilla Baptist Church kindergarten. And I remember my first day of nursery school. Again, I have that kind of memory. My mom dropped me off and I cried the entire day, which was extremely upsetting to Mrs. Patterson, who was and I had some lung capacity. And I also remember that when I went, that was nursery. By the time I got to kindergarten, the kindergartners, and that was exciting because we learned shapes and colors, and that was really fun. That was on the second floor, and my kindergarten teacher was named Mrs. Johnson, and she used to have to hold my hand going up and down the stairs because people didn't realize that I was nearsighted and I had a slight case of vertigo. I've always been afraid of heights, and I wasn't great with stairs. So Mrs. Johnson would always hold my hand, but we later realized that I had terrible vision, and that didn't help me going up and down stairs. But I remember all of these things so clearly because my father would talk about religiosity, and my mother was very, very Catholic, and most of the people in my family were very Latino and very Catholic. And my father would say, if you're doing something good because you believe that you're going to be rewarded in the afterlife, if you have the expectation of, you know, streets of gold and God with a big long beard, and, you know, no matter what you do, you were A, forgiven, and B, you know, rewarded, he said, then that shouldn't be your motivation. He'd say, Monique, excellence is its own reward. If you make right choices and you do the right thing and you take the high road and you do things with the very best of intentions, you will live a good life. You will have a good life. I promise you, excellence is its own reward. And of all the things he told me, I think that one, as I'm staring down the barrel of another birthday, is the most important. It's the truest. Of everything he said, yes, you don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat is a very close second. But excellence is its own reward. Has so much to do with spiritual autonomy, with the ability to look at a body of work. I could look at my set Thursday night on HBO Max. It didn't take the Wall Street Journal write-up. It didn't take the Variety magazine write-up. It didn't take the Interview in American Women in Film. It didn't take those things for me to be able to see that performance and know that that was a culmination of many, many years of training and honing my own craft. It was perfect. I was Nadia Comaneci. If I would have been a comedic Olympic judge, I would have given myself 3 10s. And I don't say that with ego. I say that with full faith that for many, many years, I have plied my craft. I have done hell gigs. I have not settled into saying, I live in LA now. I'm only going to do Hermosa or the Ice House or the Cakewalk, pretty much heaven for comedians. No, I'm going to continue to go to Colorado Springs or to do little hell gigs in Arizona or to do 55 and over communities, because you want a hard audience. Old people, they don't laugh at anything. You want tough audiences, do the black circuit, which back in the day, I'm not saying this is what it was known as, was the Chitlin circuit. And I did that. I played Studio 183 in Miami in the 90s, where I was literally the only person that was not African American in the room. I was Latina, but I was pretty pale. So, that's where my line, I know I look like a middle-aged white woman with good credit. My opening line was, hey, I'm Latina. I got family in jail. Like, we are good. I get it. So, I've played hard gigs, and I continue to take hard gigs. I continue to do corporates. Corporates are very hard gigs because people are sitting next to their coworkers. A lot of stars, once they get big, they don't take corporates unless they're getting a lot of money, and then they don't even care if the audience laughs or not, because they're like, you've been a down payment on a condo for my children, whatever. But, I still take them because it's a challenge. When people are with their coworkers, sometimes you're doing a show in an odd setting or at a weird time, and they're tough. Or even last week, I did a roast. I did a social distance roast, which is why I wasn't on the air. I was in somebody's backyard, 6 feet away, or more actually, from a bunch of kids. It was a 25-year-old's birthday, and I'm pretty sure they weren't being careful. They were in Orange County, and a lot of them they had that Lake Havasu, Vegas vibe of, yeah, whatever, even if I get it, I wouldn't even die, And I was like, yeah, well, guess what? I don't feel like getting sick. So, excellence is its own reward. And I've worked very hard so that I could feel that I did a handful of things extremely well. Am I a good cook? No. No, I am not. I'm adequate. A sable. I've gotten better with COVID. Am I a good driver? Depends if I'm distracted or not. If I'm not distracted, I'm a great driver. I drive a lot. I can get you to point A to point B very fast, and I can drive 700 miles and just get out to use the restroom and, buy some more Cherry Coke Zero. What am I very good at? I'm a good writer. I'm a good performer, and I'm a good talker. And, and talking in itself is an art form. Conversation, the ability to really listen to another person and process what it is they're telling you on several different levels, what their words are, how they actually feel, how they feel about what they're saying, what the outcome of the conversation, before I even call people on the phone. Not just business, but on a personal level. When I call people, I ask myself, what is the win? What do I want to have happen in this conversation? Even on a personal level, I'll be like, well, I don't want to forget to ask them about their parents, or I don't want to, or I do want them to feel supported. I feel like they might be feeling lonely. In business calls, I have a set of things in my head that I want to accomplish. I want to make sure that they understand this, that we're moving in that direction, that we're on the same page, that we've defined terms, that when they say this and I say this, that we both know what this is. Do people really think that way anymore? Am I kind of a little bit of a dinosaur? I'm okay if I am. Excellence is its own reward was extremely important. The last thing that my father would say, and it's a trick, it's the best trick in the world. My father would say, Monique, if you are the intellectual superior in any relationship, it is your moral obligation to see that it goes well. Now, what that meant was, if you believe yourself to be the smarter or in the more position of power in the discussion, that you're absolutely right, that you know what's going on here, and you're smart. If you are the intellectual superior in any relationship, it is your moral obligation to see that it goes well. Or that's the flip of the script right there, meaning that it is your moral obligation. Moral obligation. It is the right thing. It is the excellent thing. It is the taking of the high road. to subjugate winning, beating the other person down, making them feel bad about themselves, not trying to find common ground, not being able to hear their side without beating them down. It is your moral obligation to see that it goes well. Well, everybody thinks they're smarter than whoever they're in an argument with. That's why you argue. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I don't argue with people. I really don't. Anybody who knows me knows I don't argue. I explain my position clearly and say, this is why I feel the need to do this, or to think this, or to move forward with this action. And then the other person does whatever they do, argues, complains, tells me their point, says I'm obstinate, I don't compromise. I've heard it all. And number one, I remember asking a man that I cared for very deeply and knowing it was the beginning of the end when I said this. I said, so if you had to answer what your biggest challenge with me is, what is it? And he goes, you're uncompromising. And he thought I was going to take that as a big, really? And I said, yeah, you're right. I said, but let me explain why. So you can understand. There's building that bridge. I said, when a scientist walks into a lab and says, the experiment has been compromised, nobody takes out hats and balloons. Nobody drops streamers. No, everybody's upset and the petri dishes hit the garbage can. Compromise is like nobody got what they wanted. It was some mishmash in the middle. It was unpure. Throw it away. No, the reality is I don't compromise because 90% of the time I don't care. I live in my own world. I'm willing to do it your way. That's the absolute truth. I don't care about most things. I'm kind of like a dude in that way. But the 10% that matters to me, that I'm invested in, that I genuinely care about, no. If I'm giving you much more than the lion's share of what it is you want in the relationship, I don't compromise because I think I'm very fair in the small amount of things that actually register and matter to me. It's not a lot. It's really, really not. I'm not high maintenance at all. So getting back to, if you are the intellectual superior in any relationship, it is your moral obligation to see that it goes well. What an amazing world it would be if everybody walked around feeling the moral obligation to walk away from other human beings knowing that they are at peace, that they've been heard and that they have heard the other, that they have been fair in the other's point of view and assessment, and we're able to say with genuine sincerity, I don't see it that way, but let's agree to disagree and say it in a meaningful way. As we just agree to disagree, no, to genuinely say, I'm not with you on this. It's kind of the old adage of, I don't agree with you, but I'll fight to the death for your right to think that. That used to be the most American of thoughts, the most patriotic of thoughts, is the freedom to think and speak and be whatever form we wanted to be, as long as we weren't encroaching on the rights of others. When did that go down? When did that go down in flames? Amen. Thank you, Richard. So as you can see on this anniversary, I'm not only not saddened because my dad is with me every day in some way or another. I celebrate him. I celebrate him on his birthday. I celebrate him on the anniversary of him rising and going to a better place, as I'm certain that he did. I celebrate the person that he left behind in the form of me, because I feel like I took his lessons to heart. I expanded on them. I've shared them. It's like Johnny Appleseed, it very much going back to the tree story, which now I've run out of time, which I always tend to do. But the other story will hold until next Saturday, and it's a good one. So is that being a tease? Maybe. I have thoroughly enjoyed this show because it's brought back a lot of memories. It's been very joyful because I remember all of the conversations in which my dad reiterated, you don't have to tell the fat kid he's fat. If the village idiot gives you his best ball of string, you take it and you say thank you. Retail is detail, and you're always selling something, even if it's just yourself. Excellence is its own reward. And last but certainly not least, if you are the intellectual superior in any relationship, is your moral obligation to see that it goes well. That's what my dad left me. Did he leave me a pile of money? No. My favorite lines in the book, which I am actually committed to finishing under the cover of COVID, is my father left me nothing except everything I am. So that's what I'll leave you with. Until next Saturday night or 3:30 tomorrow, wherever you choose to join me. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can.